Hey everyone, I am Cinnamon Cooney, your Art Sherpa, and today you and me together are going to paint this gorgeous, mystical, magical forest scene with cherry blossom trees and a very romantic subject of a girl playing piano. It's actually easier than you think. We do have free resources like a traceable, so if you're not ready to draw yet, that's not going to be a barrier for you. On the mic is my husband, John.
Hello.
He's going to help me bring this lesson to you by making sure that the camera is pointed at the techniques that I'm demonstrating and so that you can see what is going on. All the resources, all the materials are listed in the description below. In fact, I give you the complete list for what I do all year. That way you know that you can collect it up. However, this is one, and I'll tell you how you can. You can paint with what you have. Even if it's acrylic, you can paint with what you have. You just would want to water down the same colors or similar colors in acrylic and use it on the 140-pound paper. Really just nothing to stop you. This will work for anyone in anything that you want to do. I will try to give you more than enough broken down instructions that you can adjust for what you've got going on at home. Want to go over the material?
Yeah.
You guys want to know? Like, I'm tiny. All right. Tiny is very good. So the first material I have here is an object is called traceable. Some people call it patterns. I've called it a traceable for like 7 years on YouTube, so I'm going to stick with that. And this helps you transfer an image onto paper. This is a technique used in watercolor a lot because a lot of times we want to work out our free-handed drawings away from our paper and then move them on so the paper surface is not marred in any way. So I have that on here, and you can, if you check the description below or the pinned comment in the live chat, you'll be able to find a link. If you're on Facebook and you followed the event, it is in the event for you. And if you go to the artsherpa.com, it's in the traceables tab. So like I hid it everywhere for you. I'm like the worst find it game ever because I'm like, will 10 of these work? Here's 10 of them. So you can find them. All right. So this particular paper is 140-pound watercolor paper in a block. That means all the sheets are glued together. So it's a 140-pound cold press, and I like the brand Fabriano, and I like the extra white. It's not the only brand in the world that I like. I also, if you're at Michael's, I like the Strathmore block. It's a very good block. And, you know, Arches, there are other papers. There are other wonderful papers, but this is just one that I like to go to a lot. Just looking for something I misplaced. Today's brush, I'm mostly going to be using the Raphael Soft Aqua number 14 round. Really any good round brush you have. You could probably get away with something about this size. This is a number 6 in the Corel line. I would want something just a little weightier with a good point. That's what I would be looking for. I also like to keep this out now because this is my new favorite brush, the Soft Aqua. Aha! And the other weird brush I'm going to be using, which does look like a toothbrush, but isn't. This is actually part of a brush set that I produced with Silver Brush. Oh no, I forgot to turn off my thing and Scam Likely is calling me again. Scam Likely is so fond of me. Can I call you later? I like to send them like random messages like we're friends. Do you get calls from Scam Likely? Scam Likely be calling me all the time. I really love that they're labeled like that. Just gotta break their little criminal heart. But that's not about art lessons, so let's back to art lessons. So this is a splatter tool. This is part of the Art Sherpa Galaxy set. You can find it at Michael's or Dick Blick or Jerry's Artorama. You can find them online and in-store different places. And Michael's, it will be online, but you can use coupons. And yeah, it looks like a toothbrush. You could probably get a similar effect out of a stiff toothbrush. This isn't a toothbrush. This is a specialty tool made with like filaments you would never, ever want on your teeth, but you could probably clean a barbecue with. I'm going to be using titanium white fluid paint at the end. You could just use white craft paint or white gouache. Either would be fine. I'm using this because I love the pigmentation and it's my preferred liquid paint, but you use what you have and don't worry about that at all. The colors I'm going to use today are Quinacridone Magenta, Pyrrole Red, Ultramarine Blue. I might use a little Phthalo Blue, definitely some Opera Pink. I don't really expect, I might have to get into a little bit of Payne's Gray, but I expect to stay pretty much in that palette. I have all my colors there listed below, but what you're looking for is Quinacridone Magenta, Pyrrole Red, Ultramarine Blue, Phthalo Blue, Opera Pink. Those are what I'm going to be mostly focused on. We're going to be doing wet into wet techniques. I'm going to show you a really cool trick for branches because I know for a lot of you getting those fine lines is just so challenging. So I'm going to show you a workaround if you're just right now so fine line challenged, you just can't get through. This is going to change everything for you. And I know you're going to work out that brush stroke in time. So don't worry if you ever have to use a workaround. We all use workarounds when we need them. Does that seem good?
That seems perfect.
Gosh, it's so good to see you guys. It is always a joy to be with you and get to do art with you. Oh my goodness. So I also like to give you guys a little chance to find the traceable and print it out and transfer it on. Remember, even in the live, you can pause me and rewind me and mute me. Even now.
Even now.
And this is available for replay after the live stream. So if you come in later or you find this later, don't worry. You can watch it as many times as you need to get the painting done. And all those resources are available to you after the show as well.
You know what's another resource that's
Zero
available?
pressure. What?
There's another secret one.
What?
If you want to get notified.
Ooh. Notifications.
You can do this.
Notifications.
You can text a message to the Art Sherpa. And the way you do that, you send the message, the phone number is 33222, and you send the message, the Art Sherpa. And when you send that, we respond by telling you when we go live. And that's what we do.
So I'll tell you a weird thing that happened. I made a chat.
You made a chat.
And now I don't have access to that chat.
You have no access.
So do you have access to that chat? Because I don't.
Nothing so far.
Okay, I have none. I went and looked, but it isn't showing for me.
That's okay. Everyone is super happy to see you. It's
technology. John's going to catch the chat for me. And I'm going to just say, I'm personally saying hello to you. If somehow I don't get to your question in the show, you can write support@theartsherpa.com. You can leave a comment on the video, and you can especially leave comments over on YouTube because they have a really good notification system there.
Luella,
I'm here to answer questions. Yes.
Luella was just asking, is that available over in the UK yet? And it's like, very soon.
So soon.
Very soon. Our engineers are working on it currently.
You can't believe how much places do not want you to do this. They don't want you to do it. They would rather you not. All right. Here we are. I used pencil on my sketch because I really wanted these lines to sort of hold as I painted. And I wanted to be able to do wet work into this and not be particularly worried about it. I'm going to wet out my paper. Now, when wetting out my paper, I like to use a slightly bigger brush. And that can kind of give me a hand, in getting that done. So, like, see, this is like a wide wash, but he's looking a little peaky today. But we'll get him a little bit wet, right? You can use the brush that you have, your round brush. I'm just wanting to come to, if you divide the canvas in half, just a little bit below the halfway point, kind of behind the figure, I want to dampen my paper. I want my paper to be wet, but not soaking in a puddle. Right? I want the surface of the paper to all be wet because we're going to do a very light wash technique here. You can mist your paper with water, but it won't control the line between the background and the foreground. Not terrible, though. It won't hurt you for this particular piece that much. But hurt is a strong word. Okay, so you can see that what I've got is paper that is shiny. And see, like that spot right there? That is just not wanting to be wet. I'm going to come back and I wet it until it's wet. Can you see how the shine tells me what's wet and isn't wet?
Yeah.
Like, normally what I have to do is I have to move the paper and hold it up and down, but because we have these bright lights on it, and I want it damp like that, I'm going to get my round brush. When all this is wet from here up, I'm going to get my round. I'm going to come in and grab let's start with a little mix of Opera Pink and Quinacridone Magenta. Pretty light, the two of these together. And right behind here, we're going to just make little dots. And what that's going to do is this is going to kind of mimic maybe the light coming through trees. Now we're just making some little light through trees, perhaps. Just a little bit. I want to leave it very light and open here in the center. That's how we're going to create the halo effect around the player, which somebody said reminded them of Corey Amos. And I just like, the first time, the minute I saw that comment, I was like, Cornflake Girl just started playing off in my head. Oh no. And that's going to be in my head all day now. Lilith Fair is back and will never go from my head. So you can see that I am just doing these sort of very random shapes. This is probably, as a beginner, maybe the most challenging part of the painting is to just get comfortable with your random shapes. So easy to feel like your random shapes aren't good enough and feel everyone else's random shapes are fantastic. So the goal here for you right now is to go, my random shapes are all right. I'm okay. I'm all right. I got valid shape. I can bring out a little more of the opera pink and Quinacridone Magenta. If you just have one pink, guess what? That's okay. And up here, we're going to be much thicker. And this wet, wet, wet application is why I like the block. That's why I like the block so much, guys. Why I like it is because it allows me to work this paper very wet and not have it buckle so much on me that it's unworkable. Notice how I'm painting much more solid on these outer edges. The other reason it's nice to use a pure cotton paper like what I'm using now, and it's not necessarily, there's lots of great papers, okay? So what I'm about to tell you is not pressure, it's just information, is that the cotton will hold the water a little longer and more consistently. And that's just something that you can do. Now down here, see how light this is? So I have a heavier pigment here and I'm lightening it down here. It'll be a heavier pigment around this outer edge. Right? But lighter towards the center. And we'll make sure we're kind of still wet over here because we've got kind of dry conditions in the studio today. Not on John's chair where I spilled lemonade earlier. And I still feel bad about that, baby.
Oh, it's fine.
I like fully cleaned it too, and I was like, it won't be sticky. And he's like, no, it was still sticky. That's just
it happened.
So unfair. I'm going to bring a little color here. Just a little bit under the piano. And this is why I didn't use the Aquarelle pencils this time, the water-based pencils, because I wanted to be able to go over my lines and not lose them. We're going to be here for a second with each other, but it's going to be a good time. So notice how I just tap the brush and I make these little random ziggity motions. Say ziggity with me.
Ziggity, ziggity, ziggity.
Ziggity. I'm also not being too dark from about here to here. If it gets away from you, you can take a paper towel. I'm going to show you something and then I'm going to put it back. See how I can lift that?
Oh.
Right?
Oh, let me go back over there.
Oh, no, man. I already lifted it, John.
I know. I was reading a question when you said, let me lift that. And I looked over and I was like, man.
All right, there it is. That's lifted. So see, that'll pull color up. So if it gets away from you, or you need to pull up some water, that is something you can do. It's not something I like to overwork in that way, but sometimes you need to do that, and it's okay if you do. Okay? I can come here and lift here if I needed to. I don't want to. I want it to be wet. But.
So, Nicola.
Hi, Nicola.
Was asking, can I do this in acrylic paint?
Yes. So here's the thing, and in the post about it today on Facebook, I know I got included. I even included a video from another channel that I really like that is about it, and I've done demos in group. Basically, with acrylic, you have to water down the acrylic quite a lot, which you're not used to. You have to do it on the paper. You can't do it on a canvas without a special treatment. You can do most of the techniques exactly the same from there, and where it will be a little different is that lifting that I did. The acrylic is kind of a lot more staining, and also once it's dry, it won't lift back up the way the watercolor will. But many, many of the techniques will absolutely translate over.
Let's see if I can get some picture-in-picture in here for folks.
All right. See that? And we're going to try and make this a little bit better as we paint it. Like every time we paint, try to improve things, make things better.
Now, if someone was just starting here, I would say, I think it was Deb. She was saying, what's the difference between the blocks of paint and the tubes of paint?
Oh, that's a wonderful question and a very good one to ask. The blocks of paint, or the pans, which we're most familiar with because those kind of like the Crayola pans, right? But you'll see them everywhere, and I love my travel sets. Those are watercolor paint that is dried into a pan and you reactivate it with water. In a sense, I squeeze out my tube paints here and they dry and I reactivate them with water. In the tube, they're wet until you apply them to your palette. And the reason artists like the difference between the two is sometimes you want to load a lot more pigment into a brush than a pan will let you load. And you might want a tube of that out into heavy pigment, or to be able to squeeze it out like this and then reuse it later. The pans are even more portable and easier to transport. But they are the same paint. Same binder, same pigment, same paint. One's wet, one's dry. Doesn't that look really nice? So we've got a nice little light in the center there. I think it's pretty good because we want it to look like it's light around her. Now we've got trees in the distance, and they are a little bit, what I'll say is they are a bit faded. So I'm going to make sure that my paper is wet down here. And I'm doing just making sure it's a little bit wet. I can always pull it up a bit if I get it too much, if I wet out too much. Because we're going to do a purple. Now the purple for this, I don't have purple on my palette, you might have noticed. And I don't worry about that because I mixed that from my Ultramarine Blue and my Quinacridone. They actually make just the best purple together. So I'm getting that there. And I can make them as dark as I want or as light as I want from here. If you want to just have a Dox purple, that's okay, guys. But you want to mix your Ultramarine Blue and your Quinacridone Magenta. Makes purple and acrylic too. And then I'm going to load my brush. I'll get off the extra pigment here. And I'm going to kind of tap in some distant little faded purple leaves. You see how those are a little bit faded?
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. We can put some here. I like it when it blooms like that. It's important to remember also that as you're painting, the paint will lighten. It's the color shift of watercolor. In acrylic, the paint darkens, but in watercolor, it lightens. I'm just on the toe of the brush. I'm just tapping it out. And because the paper is damp, it does this softening. If you are not getting this bloom, a couple things are at play. Your paper may be too thirsty to allow it. In other words, you can't really get the paper wet enough for the bloom. The watercolor you have may not have enough Oxgall or blooming agent or flow aid in it. You can buy those separately and add those to either, you can add it to your water. And there's a solid one that I used to really love, but I haven't seen in a while, that you could add to your palette. But you can do the water ones really easily. Never add it to a spray bottle because you don't want anything that reduces surface tension in your lungs.
Mm-hmm.
Ever.
No.
You want surface tension in your lungs. You don't know how much you need that. You don't want to be at the hospital being explained why surface tension was a thing you didn't know you needed. But you do. Mm-hmm. And you never, ever want an anti-surfactant. Surfactant, right? Or is it sulfactant? Well, either one of them, really. You don't want.
I don't think you want any of those.
But specifically the one that breaks down anything that improves the flow, you don't want to aerosolize that. Perfectly fine from your water to your paper. It's not okay in your lung. It doesn't have a fume or an off gas. That's not what I'm saying.
Now, what's the best way to dry the tube in the pan?
I just let it dry.
Just squirt it in there and let it dry?
Yeah. I don't have a molding issue with mine. I know some people have talked about, oh, mine molded. I think that's a lot about having contaminants that got into your palette, and then also about sealing it and creating conditions that are mold friendly. I'm going to come over to the left side. Do you?
I do. And my suggestion is that you fill the pan up 1/2 to 3/4 full, then let it dry,
Mm-hmm.
and then put the rest of the paint in, because depending on the manufacturer, brand, pigment, a lot of factors, when it dries, it can shrink and crack. And that doesn't affect the paint. It's just a matter of what it might do when you put it in a pan. So if you put about 3/4 of your paint in the pan, or fill the pan 3/4 full, then once it's dry, then top it off with some more paint, then it'll seal up and look like a brand new slick pan of paint. But it won't hurt anything if it cracks and pulls away at all. It's just that's the nature of watercolor and watercolor binders.
That makes a bunch of paint. That's why you like that. We're gonna do more of the how to make paint series on here on the Watercolor channel. John just loves to make paint.
I do.
Now I want another layer in my cherry blossoms out here very much. I want a little more going on, so I'm gonna get my quinacridone and my opera pink together again and make a nice little bright pop of that. And I'm gonna just needs to be wetter than this. Gonna add some more little leaves, little thoughtful spots here. It's very important to keep your shapes random. That's what nature tries to do, is be very random, and you definitely want to have things be random. If it's dried too much for you to get any sort of blooming, you can kind of re-wet. You just have to do it with clean water. You can see I can get these to soften through here. I just need it to be a little wet again to have the diffused. I just want another layer of color. Like there's just maybe different branches or things coming through. Little wet. There we go. So see how I just was able to change my mind and not be panicked about it?
Yeah.
That's the important thing for you guys to realize, is you can change your mind and in no way be panicked about it. Just creating lots and lots of interesting little dimensions. And we've had lots of dimensions here, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
Just tapping that down, getting some color out there. Making those irregular shapes that imply foresty, distant trees. Wouldn't it be great to be in a forest that looked like this? It would be amazing.
That would be really fun.
I'm going to come here and wet this a bit and kind of pull that in, because I know that I want to be able to put some trees more kind of centered there, and add some little bit of light there. Now around in the piano, when we paint her, we're going to be doing that almost closer to the end, actually, because we want this all to be dry and crisp around her. Yeah. Another way to get very random color out there is to do a splatter. See what I'm doing? You're having trouble getting the randomness, but it gets your splatters everywhere, which it isn't a problem on this particular piece.
Yeah.
But on some where you wouldn't want color, where you don't want it, it would be, and you'd have to come in and kind of do some erasing. Now, this is all in those same colors, so it's really not a problem. I'm going to come forward here. I'm going to wet above the edge, where I've kind of said is the distant landscape, and I'm going to come in and wet this down again. You can see it's trying to get it damp, not a pond, but wet. Now I have like literally taken a sheet of paper when I have like a 300-pound paper and like dip it in water and like tack it down and been like, you're wet enough now. And I stretch it so that when it dries, it does this.
Right.
And I can do very wet applications and really enjoy that. So this is sort of an easier version of that. I used to work in bigger sheets of paper, and so it wasn't really practical to buy the blocks because the blocks were so expensive, and I could only really afford to buy a single sheet at a time. That's how that was. Now I'm going to get some of my ultramarine blue and kind of layer on here. Pretty good color level.
Ooh.
Get into my pink. Now these all work together and they'll make some purples. Being very loose because this is the loose forward ground. And we're just making a loose forward space.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a little bit of my ultramarine and my quinacridone again. Maybe a little more quin. Come here and add some of that quin magenta, and you can see it just blooms into that. Mm-hmm. Each time you do that, you get kind of like some different little landscape effects. You know, if it gets too dark, I'll just come here and I know I've got my very dark tree that I may be putting over there, so I'm not worried about that. I didn't have to mask that out because it's going to be dark enough where it's going to be able to layer over it. Now, at this point, this should be just dry enough where I can do distant trees. Distant trees are going to be purple, which is my quin magenta and my my ultramarine. So see, I get right into that nice purple. Can also be nice to have a quin and opera, a little bit darker. Kind of half tone between all those. And so I'm going to come to this back area and say right here on the toe of my brush.
Over there.
And if it's too wet, which it looks like it might be, I may have to come back and dry that. So what I'll do, I'll lift this up, and if you'll hand me the hairdryer, I'm going to dry my paper real quick and then come back and add some trees. Oh, I didn't know what was there. I would have reached down. All right. I'm going to dry this real fast. Now, normally I like to let my watercolor just sit and sit and sit and sit and soften and soften and soften and soften. And I recommend that you allow yours, especially if you're very new, to do that at home without rushing through and drying it. I have an online class. You guys have stuff to do, so I'm going to use a hairdryer. But you take all the time in the world that you need for your painting so it's as beautiful as it can be.
So yeah, as she was saying, that's a process called letting your surface rest, is sometimes what they'll call it, and that's where the normal capillary action of water being drawn through the paper and pulling the pigment out just has a normal effect of finalizing. So you get these very fine structures and this detail that can come in as you let the paint rest as it dries. But blowing the hairdryer over it also, it speeds that process up. So if you don't want this effect, you can do it this way. But it's, just one of those things. You can do as you please. And thank you out there for the stars and the super chat and the emoji club support. We really appreciate all that stuff. Really, it makes it so that we can keep the hair dryers working.
Being careful because Twix is under the table. She saw the groomer, so she's having some feelings. She's a doggy who is not fond of a bath. All right, I'm going to get back into that purple now that my paper is dry. The reason that you have to worry about your paper being dry is that the pigment goes where the water is. So if I'm trying to have a controlled object like, say, the trunk of a tree, you may not want it to bloom out and soften out into the background that much. I'm going to make sure that this is a pretty light wash because this is a very distant tree. And in a misty forest, the faraway trees will be lighter. I'm on the toe of my brush, and I bring long lines. One of the things that happens to you guys when you're new to painting is that you will do too short of lines for your trees. I'm going to add a little one here, and then maybe that little trunk up here. I can always kind of do some distant application. That kind of speaks to a distant leaf, doesn't it? This is very relaxing, I have to tell you. This is my favorite. Come in here and maybe a little more purple over here. I want it to be very light.
Cool.
These are the light, distant trees. And I'm just bringing this on up. Just on the toe of my brush. I like to paint trees. They are weird little creatures. Maybe a little more pink here at the top of these little branches in the distance. You want the pigment to be low, so what you'll see me doing sometimes if I overload the pigment load, that's what darkens my paint, is how much pigment's on it. I will go into my water cup. Yeah. And that look nice. Just super fun to do. All right. Can you see the chat that we talked about in Skype?
I can. I was just over there taking a look. I'll take another quick look.
Okay.
Is there a limit to how many times you can re-wet watercolor paper?
Not one that I have personally found or heard talked about. And the reason I'm caveating it like that is I'm sure there is for some papers, because there's a lot of different watercolor papers made all over the world. I have a book that was given to me from Pierre over at Sennelier, not Sennelier, Savoir-Faire, and it has like papers from so many places in it, and they're all very different. So what I'll say is I haven't run into any issues at all with the Fabriano or the traditional watercolor papers that I have used that are, 140 pound, 300 pound cold press, regular cotton paper. If you get into something that's maybe a little more non-traditional or commonly used, I would still go forth and do a little extra research. That's a good question. So these are just distant little trees. And if I want to kind of make them, you can kind of add a little distant growth of them. That little wet line kind of gives me maybe forest landscape that's far away. Now, I'll show you something. If you're having a lot of trouble with your lines, if you wet the paper and you use a watercolor pencil, look, you can get some very fine lines. That's that trick I was telling you. If you just can't get it, it's important to remember that they make watercolor pencils, and you can use those in your watercolors and get really sharp, pointed lines. So don't feel like that you're branch challenged and so therefore can't do a project. You just may need an extra little tool or help. And that's okay, because every once in a while we all need help that way.
Yeah.
As I get more into this, and like, I love cherry trees is what it is. And this idea of this is just, it captures me. So I can just play with this a little bit longer and keep putting in those little leaf textures. If you like this, there's a man walking a dog in a fall forest you can find on the website. It's I don't have it on, I think we did it on the acrylic YouTube channel back before we started the watercolor. And it is just stunning. Just a stunning piece. These are just distant little trees. Some of them can be lighter, I think, and do quite well. Maybe a little more of the purple going. I'm kind of creating a little sense of depth and dimensionality into the forest around her.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of mask this off a bit with paper towel, right? I'm going to get my brush fairly loaded with pink. I just want some more little unexpected splatters.
Those splatters are so cool.
I like it. I want it. I'm putting it in.
Now, it's good to practice splattering, though, yeah?
It is important to practice splattering, and it does make a mess, guys. It is messy. It's a technique you can skip if you're not into it. I just think it will overall add quite a lot of, especially when we do the white later, I think it'll add a lot of to the space. And, and here's another thing you do come in and when it's splattered, but then if you want to get it wet, see?
Mm-hmm.
You can take some of the splatters and move them into organized structure. Weird thing we rarely do, but it's a thing that you can do. If you're like, oh, I need to do that, that's a thing that you can do. I'm going to put in a few more tree structures. These are a little more robust and darker. A little more robust and darker. And in a forest, whether, you're doing a green one or a fantasy pink one like this, as the trees approach you, especially if they're backlit, they're going to be darker. Mountains kind of do this sometimes in landscapes. Add a little canopy to that. little bit coming forward. And then over here we can have some nice darker little trees going on. Let's get our ultramarine blue out a bit. I'm still going to let it get into the purple.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we'll come, maybe like up here. I'm on the toe of my brush. And I'm kind of brush stroking up. And then when I want to do a root, I'll kind of pull this in. Little roots of the tree that are perhaps and up there, I don't want that dark line to go that dark, that high. So I'm going to come back a bit with my wet brush and sort of soften that. See how I did?
Mm-hmm.
I just don't want it to be up there that dark, that high. Might grab a little more blue. Come in here and maybe come under that. A little bit of wet, and that creates a little sort of offshoot. Now over here, I have the opportunity to have quite a dark space. So I'm going to take my quinacridone and my ultramarine blue, make it a very dark purple. And I can kind of come over here above the halfway mark. Doing that. That's looking good. Dry enough over here to kind of work over here some more. Now I might get into my quinacridone, like just really strong quinacridone. Just bringing these little interesting tree shapes up. I love doing that. Growing the tree.
Mm-hmm.
Are we doing good on questions?
Yeah, so far. It seems that the folks are pretty excited to try this out, and the blooming and the layers of these colors are, pretty fantastic.
It is super fun to do. I'm going to add a little purple toning to this tree. I love it.
Downos doing a really good job of answering some questions about paperweight and things out on Facebook. So
right. We have for you guys on Facebook, on YouTube, moderators, people who know where the links are.
Mm-hmm.
They know where the links are buried, John.
They know where all that stuff is, so that if you need to know where a lesson on a watercolor lesson is from last Wednesday, they have a link. Which is what is going on out there. Or you want to know about where you can get a Fabriano block of paper on Amazon. There's a link.
There is a link.
There's a link.
Sometimes it's nice to put some little branches that tell a story up in the canopy. They are putting little branches telling a story in the canopy. Some distant little trees that are A little more blue in there. Lots of tree story to tell.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of fun to enjoy. And then this is now dry, so I can kind of work my very dark tree.
On the other side?
Mm-hmm. So my very dark tree, interesting, I'm going to make a pretty dark purple, and I might get some of my Pyrrole Red into it. See how that deepens it?
Mm-hmm.
In this, it just really unexpected way. So let's come here and we're going to say, all right, fairly thick and substantial trunk. Right. Is coming down from the top. Of that surface. Thinner at the top of that trunk and then thicker as it comes down. That's a very courageous little series of lines to make.
That's a really cool blend.
Up at the top, I'm going to put a lot more ultramarine. Maybe back into the very deep magenta of it. Fun to do. And come down here at the bottom with some more ultramarine blue, and I like to just texture and some thought into what's going on in that trunk. Yes, it's super dark. There we go. I think this one will take a little bit of a deviation over that way. More blue. So the trunk has some, it is a dark tree, it is a close tree, but it's not a single tone tree. I think that's super important to be aware of, is that the tree is not one tone. I'll make a kind of crookedy tree over here. I may have intensely crooked my tree. That's okay. Sometimes trees need to be crookedy. And then just sort of bring some dark roots.
Let's see here.
And get some more ultramarine blue and kind of hit the top of these little branches coming down.
Abigail was wondering, please let me know how much approximate water is on the brush when painting those trees.
The brush is fairly wet. I do like, so when I'm doing the brush, right, you're dragging a lot of water off, right, or a little. On these, I drag just a little. So the brush is I don't know. Can we show this here?
Yeah, hold on a
I'm
second.
gonna squeeze it out of the paper. Hopefully that might help you.
Let me see. We'll compare. Hold on, I don't know if we can.
So it's like about 3 drops in there.
Oh, there we go. Now I can. It just my camera didn't move that fast.
All right, I'm gonna try it again.
Oh nope, can't see over your hand. That's the problem. There you go.
I don't know if it'll show. Okay.
Yeah, there it goes. Little drop.
Yeah, it's about that wet. It's not dropping across my canvas, but it is certainly heavily loaded.
It's got some moisture in it.
Yeah, and that's the thing to be aware of, is that it is heavily loaded. I can always get some ultramarine blue if I need to darken these. It is a fun game to play. You can see when I get out to the tiny branches, they're just so tiny, tiny branches. Weird crookedy tree today. Over crookeded my tree. That's okay. Who is to say? Like that. Still a nice dark tree. And then we'll come to the top. Again, fairly heavily loaded, right? With that heavy, heavy load. What is coming off from the side? I can even get some ultramarine blue, just to deepen one of these in a deeper way.
Mm-hmm.
And some branches coming off that way. Another big tree. I'm going to grab a little of my opera pink and quinacridone together. I'm going to kind of tap out a little, maybe more considered forest floor. I'm going to be doing, the final splatter, but it could be nice to just say that this is, the paper is drying. I'm just making rough brush strokes out into this. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening there. Now, all around her is more than dry enough. How are you guys doing? I'm going to have a sip of my drink. If we've got any questions, I'll take them. And then we'll start painting the figure.
There was a lot of questions about sizes of paper and some stuff, like 8x10 is available in the Fabriano watercolor blocks.
8x10 is a perfectly great watercolor size, and it's easier to use with traceables because it fits your printer better. 9x12, you kind of have to size things up or scooch them around to make them always work, but 8x10 is smaller than 8.5x11, which means all traceables work on your paper.
Mm-hmm.
This is a fun fact. You might enjoy it better. But on camera, 9x12 looks a little better.
Abigail was just saying thank you so much for being helpful.
I love doing this, and thank you so much for being part of this with me. I love having a watercolor channel. I love watercolor. Watercolor is my first love. Mm-hmm. Then charcoal, then pastels, and then like acrylic because, I grew up in acrylic and did a lot of acrylic, and I think I rebelled against acrylic. Weird rebellion, but I may have, and had to come back to that, at a different point. And I liked all the messy material. I think you can remember this when we were first together. I loved it if I was like in overalls and covered in little patches of colorful dust, pastels. Like, I thought that was a cool look.
Mm-hmm.
But I love being back in watercolor. I love it. The unexpected little moments that happen with it are really special to me, and I like that very, very much. So stuff like this just means a lot for me personally.
And I really enjoy doing these with you guys. I love seeing you guys chat out here, talk about all the stuff that you're working on.
I may think this has got a good enough point. So on her, I'm going to start her in purple for sure. I am not going to do her wet into wet. And I'm going to work from left to right because I am right-handed. You may want to work right to left if you are left-handed. My reason for that is it can help you avoid dragging your hand in paint. I'm on the toe of the brush. So this is a silhouette, and then also it's not a silhouette, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because she's so multi-tonal. Let her hair really blow in the forest this time, perhaps. And then as I come down, maybe I get more into my magenta.
Mm-hmm.
Be delicate on the arm. I'm going to soften the line between the purple and the magenta with my brush here because as the water was pushing up, it was making a little noticeable ridge. That's a thing that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get some more into my blue. And I do want the brush a little bit wetter. That was too dry of a brush, which is why I went back for water. And I just want a little bit blue. Those little subtle differences sometimes can, even on a silhouette like this, give us some real drama if we want it. I'm going to get some pure Quin Magenta, maybe even some opera pink on there. I'm going to come here. And then as I'm going to go back, I will get more into my purples that are happening. So how I get that little ombre is that the edges are wet, and where they're wet, they tend to want to flow together.
Mm-hmm.
and bloom into each other, and that creates a softening. But by adding that bright pink to the front, it gives the illusion of there being maybe a little light to the front of it. Little subtle things that pull it together. Cross here with just a slightly darker color. There was an interesting discussion with John and I about three-legged piano or four-legged piano.
Well, because there's been a lot of variation on pianos over the years. And so just depending on your piano make, manufacturer, weight, size, things like that, you may need more than 3 legs. And there were even some very squarish ones that definitely had 4 legs. They're box grand pianos, which are differently shaped. But stuff you don't know till you know.
So you know. I decided to make it 3-legged because I just was nerved out by 2. There we go. Maybe come and get a little more blue. Just while it's still wet.
Mm-hmm.
Glaze a little bit of the darker purple back here. So that's kind of creating a little a little space. That's just lovely, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Now, purple, 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 which we now know is our quinacridone and our ultramarine. Because we want to make sure that our work has shadow.
Hmm.
I'm going to come along with a little bit of blue under. And kind of put that deeper in the center of the shadow, but I don't like, it's wet on wet, so it has its own little moment. And I really feel like I want to take some of my opera pink and just pink up the bottom of this dress a bit.
Yeah, that does look cool. And this is is this your original drawing?
No, this is artist is credited in the description with link where I got it. So here's my thing on this. If you guys like share something with me, this was a thumbnail for a meditation video, and I saw it, other people saw it, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, can you paint it?" If I can license it, which means that not only is the artist given permission, but has been paid, I will do that and teach that on the show. I don't generally I don't teach other people's artwork without either their consent or payment to them. When I do stuff inspired by other artists, generally I shout them out, and it will be in the style, but not the image. It'll just be like, oh, it's in the style of this particular one. And there's a group of them that go on the I don't know if you guys have seen this. These study videos. Have you guys seen the study videos? So there's these like lo-fi study videos and 12 hours of live music videos, and for like a half minute we thought we would want to have like artist music station. We were gonna like live stream 24 hours a day, but it kept failing, and it was just making the mods crazy, and it was a lot. And now it's a watercolor channel.
And now it's a watercolor.
But we found, I have to say that the best images online that anybody finds are the ones on the, like, lo-fi student study like channels. So if you see something like that, that's a thumbnail that you're like, man, I would love to see a watercolor of that or a painting of that, you can send that to me. If it's licensable, I will license it. And if it's not, I won't. So you don't have to, it's not like you're going to trick me into stealing from somebody.
Right.
I'll check it. It's either doable, it's on Pixabay, it's somewhere that's gettable, or it's not. At which point I'll be like, oh, I'll do something like it, but not that. So, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I use professional sites that pay. I don't generally do. I recommend to you to do Pixabay or Upsplash or Paint My Photo because they're free and they're readily available as references, and then you don't have to worry about those things. But, for what I do online, I pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
But you guys help me do with your wonderful patronage. So thank you. We're not done. We have more to do here. So as I mentioned, we were going to do some splatter. Mm-hmm. And I think splatter is a good idea, especially in this piece. It looks really, really good. So I don't want to pre-wet the paper. In the reference, it's pre-wet. I don't want to do that because that is the potential for incredible chaos in your painting at home. And I try not to do things that just invite chaos for new students. Just say, please, have the most difficulty. We're already doing enough that you guys are working on like branches. I don't need to be like, let's work onto a wet surface over a painted surface, but don't lift the painted surface, but also splatter the painted surface. Not going to do that to you on a painting listed beginner. That seems mean. I'm going to put out, as I mentioned before, this is the fluid acrylic from Golden. So acrylic comes in heavy bodied, soft body, or and then kind of like a high flow ink. Right, and fluid is what Golden calls. So some people call it soft body, some companies call it fluid, and that's kind of like the consistency of craft paint, right? So there's the stuff that's like whipped cream, that's heavy body. There's the stuff that's like craft paint, that's fluid or soft body, and there's the stuff that's like ink, that's high flow or ink. So you could do high flow or ink for this technique or soft body. I like soft body. And I'm making sure that now, and it does look like a toothbrush. Clue to this is you can do this with a good stiff toothbrush. I made a set of brushes for splatter because it's weirdly hard to find good if it's stiff enough to splatter paint, it's not nice for your mouth, so they're hard to find. I'm going to come here and I just flick the brush. I have a whole video on how to do splatter so that it does not cause anxiety.
Well, it's definitely a practiced skill.
It is a practice skill. And my 2 cents is practice on a sheet of paper before you splatter your art. Mm-hmm. Just do that. That one thing saves you so much misery. If your load is too wet and you're going to get strings, if your paint isn't going to splatter well, if there's some weird thing that's going to mess up your world, it's going to show up on the practice paper and you will have saved your painting. And then you can just very carefully dot out individual little dots of paint and not worry about the splatter. So just practice paper. Also, maybe not on your best granite countertops. And then finally, if you get paint where you didn't expect it, rubbing alcohol removes it when it's dry or wet. Off your pet, too. I've been online teaching for a minute, so I've answered a lot of questions. I'm getting a little happy with my splatter. I got a little happy with my splatter. But that's okay. And rinse it out because you don't want to leave it out. And I'll peel this up off my porcelain palette. Like as soon as it dries, it'll peel right up. So we have that. Now you can come back through and you can hit with another layer of paint. Actually, it's a weird thing that you can do. You can paint over acrylic, but you can't. So here's what it is. You can't really paint watercolor over acrylic, but it is a bit of a resist because it's plastic. And so you can sometimes do washes around it, if that makes sense. I now have splatters on all my
That
everything.
looks good.
The splatters on everything, so I have to use rubbing alcohol and wipies. I'll go ahead, though, and use my white acrylic and a detail brush to sign. How did you guys like today? Do you feel like you learned something?
This is amazing.
It was a lot of fun. The next time we watercolor, we're going to be doing an ocean, and we're going to learn some really cool techniques there. It's going to be a nice blue ocean. I'm very excited about it. And then tomorrow, actually, I think we got ocean. Tomorrow on the acrylic channel, we're going to do a painting that we did as a watercolor.
Yeah.
But now we're going to do it as an acrylic, which was this wave and splashy rock. You can see it on the website. We didn't do it on this channel. I think we just did it on Facebook. But you can find it on the website. You can see the wave and splashy rock, which means it's traceable and everything is there. And we're going to come back and do it on a little 9x12 tomorrow, step by step, on the Art Sherpa official channel. So be sure and subscribe to this channel, and then go subscribe to my other channel, and then run over to Facebook and follow that, and then go over to Instagram and follow that. And if you can do those things, and maybe Pinterest is a good idea too. If you feel charitable, TikTok and Twitter, but I'm not claiming to be good at either of those platforms. I'm over there and I share weird things. None of them are good. They're not bad. They're not controversial. They're just not, Actually, that's what's wrong with them, is they're not bad and controversial. So they're just like, I'm saying a happy art thing. And Twitter's like, you got no more drama than that? And I'm like, well, no more drama than that.
Before you go, what color combos would you suggest other than these two to do it with?
Well, golds and oranges and reds and browns.
Oh, that would be good. Golds and reds would be beautiful.
Take you right into fall. This just begs to be a fall painting. And then we may do something similar in this narrative, that I do something that kind of goes with this, as a fall painting. Because I like that little dancy violin girl. So it'd be pretty easy for me to create a little figure in a very similar forest. I also think turquoise and blues and greens and a little hint of purple, almost like a mermaid palette, like an undersea palette, would be a lot of fun. And of course, a black and white study with a pop of color in the middle. Like if it was all black and white and then she was on just reds, that would look amazing. And you could do complements too. You could do complementary colors. Like you could be like purple and yellow and get some really crazy dynamic drama going with it. I would say if you like painting it, every time you do the trees, you're going to get better at the branches. Remember, if the branches are giving you grief, you can just get a watercolor pencil and just wet the paper and then draw them out, and it will just be a watercolor. It will, because the paper's wet, it will soften like it's watercolor, and it'll be like you did beautiful fine lines. It's a weird trick nobody ever thinks to do. Not nobody ever, just like as a new student, you wouldn't think to do. So sure. That's a really fun one to do. I think you really could just play with this and play with this and play with this, and you would only get better at where you wanted objects to be and how you wanted things to play out. And if you love this one, you've got to go check out the Man and the Dog, which is on the Art Sherpa official channel and on the website. It's the Autumn Man walking a dog. It's fantastic. And again, meditation video inspired. So it's just one of those fun ones where it's like, I feel like I should be listening to some groovy jams with a particular beat when you paint it. So maybe you should. Maybe when you paint this, you should listen to those beats. Go to that channel and listen to the beats.
Yeah.
The lo-fi. I don't know what any of that means. John knows what all that means. I don't know. It's just a relaxing style of music that I guess is good for studying. I listened to Metallica, so I apparently was wrong in that.
There are days.
Good for studying. Maybe I would have had much higher grades if I had listened to anything else. I wasn't listening to that. I was listening to The Cure. So Kate Bush. So it was either drama or so no middle ground. Certainly not Mozart. What?
Well, that's good.
You didn't need to know that. You came here to paint, right?
That's what they came here to paint with you. So they're definitely interested in this.
Well, this is what you get. Definitely check out all the things. Remember, subscribe here into my acrylic channel and follow the Facebook page. Go by Instagram and hit the follow there. And go by Pinterest and hit the follow. And if you feel charitable, TikTok. And I do TikTok.
Mm-hmm. You talk.
Badly.
You tick and talk.
I tick and I talk. But I can't. You know what? It's just, I'm going to sit there. A lot of people will be like, well, I'm just not, it's too young for me. But that isn't what it is, because I see plenty of people in a wide range of ages that like get that sort of like sassy little moment. And I'm like, and you want to watch me paint a thing to music? But I do that, and then I tweet, but I don't do it dramatically. So it's a chill place. It's a good place to show me painting, though.
Yeah.
If you needed to know that's all what's going on.
I think that's good.
Are we good?
I think we're good.
Are we good? Are you good at home? You feel good? If you have questions, concerns, things you want to know about, anything, definitely in the questions, send me a question. I'm happy to answer questions. If you want to share, you can share with us on all the social media places that you like to share. Like if you want to talk to other people, you can share on Facebook. And if you don't want to talk to that many people, you can share on Instagram. And if you want to weirdly talk to like me to see it, you can share it over on Twitter, because we've only got a few people over there. So it's very like, what you doing? I don't know. I'm just over here. I'll tweet it. I just can't get into the hullabaloo, the hoorah-rah.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for your time today. I really enjoyed this painting. I know I needed it. I'm sure you guys needed it. It was just super relaxing to do. Maybe it'll become a version of this will become an acrylic painting in the future. Be good to yourselves. Be good to each other. And I want to see you and an easel.